What's up, everybody? I'm Scott.
I'm Jason.
And you're listening to an almost springtime episode of Liquid Carnage. What's up, buddy?
Oh man, nothing much. How was the party on Saturday, my friend?
It was wild. It was good. It was very classy. It was very elegant. And then, what happens when all the classy ends and the people get drunk at a casino? Just the fun happens. And it was a late night. It was a long weekend, but it was a good weekend. How was yours?
Mine was. We are in the process of looking for a house to buy in the area, and I don't know about you, but when you're looking for a house, it's stressful. It's just stressful. We've gone, and the problem with the big city is that like in Kingman, there's like 3 neighborhoods. You're going to live in one of those 3 neighborhoods, or you're not going to.
Yeah.
Well, in Phoenix, there's like 50,000 neighborhoods that you could live in, and all of them have pluses and minuses. And so, and of course, in Kingman, you drive to like one street and you'll see 5 of the 7 houses that you identified. Here, we drive probably 50, 60, 70 miles driving around trying to find a house. And it's just exhausting.
I bet. It's well, you're in a major metropolitan area, so you have a lot more options. And more options are sometimes good, and sometimes they can be maddening because you're gonna drive around, looking at all these different places and you have to decide like what works for you.
Now, when you were looking for your house, were there things on a checklist that you said, okay, I've got to have this, I've got to have this,
and I've got to have this? I kind of figured out what I wanted, and I had the ideas like what neighborhoods I wanted to be in. Ironically, I didn't end up in any of those.
Okay.
I ended up in a different one that was a little bit further down on my list, but the house had everything I wanted. The main thing I wanted, though, was a bigger bedroom, a bigger kitchen, and a doggy door, or potential for a doggy door. And I have that. So I'm happy with, for the price I got my house, and for the potential, the neighborhood growth of the area I'm in, it was a great investment.
Yeah. And was there ever a time where you thought, I'm just gonna rent a house, I'm not gonna buy one, or did you always
I thought about it for a while. And looking back, I bought my first house when I was 22. I probably should have just rented then, but I didn't know any better. And I still have that house now. It's my rental property, so I guess it works out for me. But I wouldn't have done it if I had the chance to do it again, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh. I sometimes I think, man, renting would be nice because then we don't have to worry about, like, if something breaks in the apartment, we don't have to fix it. It just becomes fixed by someone else, and the expenses of that are there. But we're starting to feel the cramp of 1,100 square feet is starting to get a little small. And so, so like on our list, we said it has to be at least the size of the house that Noreen had up in Kingman. So that's, 1,600 square feet. So we put that on our list, and we said, we really want 3 bedrooms. We don't want to do anything less than 3 bedrooms. So we put that on the list. And then, so you put your needs, like, I need it to be this, this, and this. And then you start looking at your wants, and okay, we want to have a pool, but we're not so, if we don't have a pool, that's fine. We don't want to have to do a lot of, like, Scott, there are so many of these houses that they're charging like full price, and they need probably 20% more money to fix it up to make it modern.
In your particular case, you're in an area where there's a lot more HOAs too, so you have to look at, is there an HOA in that neighborhood, and how much is that going to be on top of the mortgage payment?
Yeah, exactly. And in some cases, the HOA is like 10% of the mortgage, which is a lot of money anyways. So
I bet
it's been a stressful time, man.
To tell us about their home buying experiences, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage. If you want a tour of the east side of the valley, the southeast side of the valley, hit up our executive producer Tom at Liquid_EP. He will drive you around to all of his favorite neighborhoods in the southeastern valley. He lives in the Tempe, Mesa, Chandler border area, right in there, so he knows it pretty well.
Well, see that what a plug. Yeah, we definitely want to stay on the east side of 17 just for traffic, like because both of our jobs are east of downtown, so we want to kind of stay in that area. So I'm going to become an
I'll
expert
openly
on the
admit, when I
east
lived down
side,
there for
baby.
college, I only wanted to stay on the east side. I felt better on the streets because the way Phoenix is laid out, if you don't know, it's in a grid system. The avenues are on the west side of Central, and the streets are on the east side of Central. And I just felt more comfortable on the street side, in the Mesas and the Tempes and Scottsdale areas. And it's a great city to live in if you get the opportunity. So what you guys are going to find a great house, and it's going to be fantastic. I mean, Hank's so excited. You just heard him take off to go tell the neighbor dogs.
Oh, I love it, Hank. We haven't had
he's been behaving.
Sighting in a while.
We've had to move our recording locations out into the open for better Wi-Fi. So he gets to be a part of the weekly show right now, and all three are pretty happy about it.
Oh, yeah, I know, and we don't have to edit this time for any yelling at the dogs or anything. So that's
I did get a compliment. We have a new listener this week. Our friend Melissa Sweeney, who formerly worked at the institution we worked at. Her husband is basically the new you at my job. Yeah, and she just
really awesome.
She and her husband came to the Black Tie Gala with Stephanie and Jenna Marshall over the weekend, and she was mentioning that she is now listening to our podcast. So I had to apologize profusely for all of our follies, because that's not a great first impression for someone to listen to all 90 of our episodes and find out that we're not nearly as cool in person as we make ourselves out to be on the podcast.
Oh, and then yet some will say that we're cooler on the podcast than we are in real life, man.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're cooler in real life than on the podcast. I thought you said it the other way. See, I wasn't.
It's been a long week already.
That was my fault. Yeah, no kidding. So, yeah, I mean, you've had a lot going on in your life. I've had a lot going on in my life. When does it ever slow down? I think we had a podcast on that. Maybe when do you ever just stop and smell the roses?
I'm going to take some time off next week. My job's been pretty busy lately, so I'm going to take at least 2 days off in the middle of the week next week and try to get down to Phoenix to just watch baseball. Yeah, spring training's in full effect.
Spring training, that's awesome.
Come down for a day or so and just watch a game and just be mindless. So once I get that figured out, I'll be texting you to see if maybe we can get our executive producer Tom to tag along with us. We can find a day late next week and just go have a couple beers and watch a game and just hang out and enjoy the springtime in Arizona.
I'd love it. Yeah, you just let me know when that day is, and I will try to make sure that I'm available.
As you know, Snowpocalypse 2019 was 2 weeks ago, and as we record this, it is now 75 degrees in Kingman, and there's no sign of any snow whatsoever. So it's amazing how the weather can change on a dime here in Arizona.
There was a huge tornado this week in Alabama, Arkansas, one of those places where it killed all those people. And our weather's damn good. I mean, we get heat stroke.
Hydrate, that'll fix that.
So we got to be careful of that. Hydrate, but we don't deal with tsunamis and tornadoes and earthquakes and all that other stuff. Yeah. If you had to go, if you were going to go out in a blaze of glory, which one would you want to die in? Earthquake, tsunami, tornado, hurricane. Which one's your
none sound ideal.
Bread and butter?
Let me just preface this with
okay. You'd rather die with a 20-year-old hard body.
I want to die,
preferably female, but not.
I mean, that's every man's dream. I don't. God, exactly, I've got a total fear of heights and a total fear of drowning. So I whatever it is, I hope it'd be quick. So be like if a tornado picked me up and just threw me, or I got hit with something I didn't see coming from a tornado or a hurricane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be okay. I think a lightning strike would be quick.
Yeah.
Just like you're just like out there, you're playing golf or whatever, starts raining, and
and I agree. I wish that'd be the case. With my luck, it would just fuck me up more than I already am, and I don't know if I could.
Hey, Scott, speaking of fuck you up more than you already are, have you seen the new Netflix series
no, I haven't.
Called Losers? Oh man, this series is one that I think it's one of these series that makes you think, wow, we've really lost track of what the importance of life is. It basically chronicles about 8 stories of professionals or people who have lost major losses in their careers, and it documents how they lost and then how they came out of it on the other side. And it's just so fascinating because we live in that society where if you're not a winner, then you're a loser, and there's no middle ground. And this one talks about how these people failed doing what they were supposed to have done successfully, and how they came out the other side and made something of their lives. Very interesting. I recommend it to anyone who's out there. It's called Losers. And at first I thought it was like a humor sitcom, but no, they're real life stories. Most of them are sports stories. In fact, I think maybe all of them are sports stories. But every single one of them said, you know what, even though I didn't win or I wasn't successful, that failure brought me to the next level of a success that I had no idea was even possible.
It's interesting you brought up
and
documentaries. I ended up watching the Michael Jackson documentary on Netflix or on HBO, Leaving Neverland.
Oh,
and I have to the first part on Sunday night I watched that, and I haven't gotten through the second part yet. But after the first part, I turned it off completely, distraught and disgusted. And just sad for how our culture revered this man.
I think that for whatever reason, it seems more and more that we don't want to believe that famous people, rich people, successful people could have this dark side of their behavior. We don't want to believe Bill Cosby would do that, or we don't want to believe that Michael Jackson would do that. And it's one of those things where we just I think it is part of our culture. If a very uneducated, underemployed person commits that crime, we kind of expect that, right? Like we expect that would do something like that. But when you see a famous person do terrible, terrible things, you're like,
well,
how is that possible? I think
you said it right there.
Like, how is that
possible? An uneducated person, I think uneducated might be the way to do it. We a lot of times overlook the fact that some of these actors or famous people were never formally educated, and they got famous, like in Michael Jackson's case, at a very early age, and never had formal schooling, and had a very bizarre bringing up anyway. So the morality might be skewed,
And do you think that we just assume that you don't get to be that certain level of success without being smart and being an honest person? And I mean, we just assume that as a society, we just assume that these people did it the honorable way.
But I think at the end of the day, you can only really assume that if you're going to make that assumption in business. When you start talking about being a singer or even recording, like a TV actor in some cases, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world. Sometimes you just have to have a good voice or be good looking, or sometimes both.
Well, and I mean, and it seems like the rich and beautiful people, they get away with a lot of stuff that us poor schmucks or ugly people like myself would never get away with.
Watching, because the documentary focuses on a kid from Australia and a kid from Simi Valley that, from what I gathered, he was fooling around with at the same time. He just kept them separate. And they just talk about the seduction that he went through to convince these kids and literally seduce these kids and tell them how if they ever told anybody, if they got caught, that both the kids and him would go to jail. They'd never be allowed to see each other anymore. And then the kids get into the jealousy when they find out there's a new little boy running around with Michael Jackson. It was bizarre. Like, truly captivating, horrifying TV.
And after watching the first half, you said you turned it off. What were your thoughts about Michael Jackson before you watched
his music? And I remember all these. Those are not my dogs, for the record, Tom. Make a note.
No, that was my dog. My
Um,
dog wanted to squeeze a
I
squeak toy.
remember back in the early '90s when he was going through all those allegations and whatnot, and I don't. Yeah, I remember wanting to believe him back then that he was innocent, but after watching this and having about 25 more years of my life added to me since then and more experience, I turned it off just disgusted and wondering, like, I feel like I need to delete all of his music off of my cloud. I
Wow. So you're like this really impacted your
I mean,
opinion.
It's all stuff that we've heard for years, but to hear like the details of what these kids would go into, and the parents, they interviewed the parents of both these kids too, and just the naivety of the parents, because like, oh well, Michael had the mentality of a 9-year-old boy, so he didn't think it was that big of a deal when he wanted the kid to come over to play, or he would sneak over to the house and they'd take walks at night, or he would call and they talk for hours on the phone. I mean, as I don't have kids, but as an adult with common sense, I would look at that and say, that's a grown ass man. I don't care how innocent you think he is. That's not okay.
Yeah, I mean, even if your radar was on, which it sounds like these people,
Exactly.
they were so enamored by it's Michael Jackson that they didn't even like the radar was turned off for that. Even if you didn't suspect that he was doing anything wrong, you would still have to ask and question yourself: is this appropriate for a 35-year-old man to be hanging out with 10-year-old boys?
And like I said, I haven't finished the second part yet. I can only imagine it's just as horrifying. I just haven't had time this week. But it's worth watching on HBO if you have HBO or the HBO apps, just to kind of get an idea. Because a lot of people might not realize, the younger generation, how impactful he was to our culture in the 80s and 90s. I mean, he was music.
Well, yeah.
He was pop culture.
Well, he's king of pop. I mean,
yeah.
he was the king of pop. And so I equate that to the same thing that like an actor like Kevin Spacey is going through. Or you think about, Bill Cosby, all these people. I mean, they're like at the pinnacle of their profession, highly successful. And I don't know whether it's an arrogance that, the rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to me, or if you think that I have such power that what I'm doing is just part of what I deserve to be able to do. I'm not quite sure where the mental dynamic is that pushes from the best of what you do to then become behavior that is just horrific, disturbing. I like that term better. So interesting. Yeah. Cause, and even, obviously with all the stuff that Michael Cohen was talking about with Trump, so many people who support Trump would say, I don't believe a word you're saying. There's no way that Trump would do this and this and do this and do this. And I really think it's because people just don't think someone as, quote, successful as Donald Trump would have to resort to these kind of activities to be successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why, I don't know why there's a naivete on our part to think that or not. I don't know, but I find it fascinating.
Are we idolizing the rich and famous because we want to be like them someday, or they create something that we love so much that we're willing to look past their faults, no matter how deep and big they may be?
Well, yeah. I mean, like we overlook the fact that if a normal person did that behavior, it would be frowned upon, whether it was true or not, right? Let's not even get into that part, but we would frown upon it. But if a rich person does it, then we don't believe it, or we don't want to buy into it.
Isn't that the code in prison? Like murderers and rapists are on one level, but if you touch a kid on any level, you're basically a dead man walking in prison.
Wow. So the hierarchy, yeah.
I've heard that. I've heard that I don't want to say theory, but that story that in prison you could do a lot of things, but if you touched a child in that capacity, even the worst of the worst will kill you on principle.
Oh wow, yeah. See, and when I think about that, it's true. I mean, there are probably a lot of criminals that like bad people who would never do what Michael Jackson did, right? Like, and we look at them as bad because they murdered someone or they sell drugs or they, so there's a level of judgment that we place on people for what they do, and yet even a murderer wouldn't molest a child.
Yeah,
like, hey, I can do some bad things, but I won't do that.
Weird moral high ground when you start getting into that. It's very. It's a very interesting topic, an interesting take on it that you could probably dive a whole lot deeper into if you had a chance to, research some different cases online and, even talk to former inmates, because I'm sure, they have some stories to tell about those situations.
Well, so if I told you that a normal person went to Vegas, got married for 72 hours, and then basically divorced a guy.
Yeah.
You'd have an immediate oh my gosh, I can't believe they did that. That's just crazy. Mm-hmm. But Britney Spears does it, and no one even bats an eye or thinks that that didn't stop her.
It was 55.
Oh, 55 hours. Okay, so yeah, but no one stopped going to her concerts. No one,
she even got to go back
themselves.
To have a residency.
Yeah.
But granted, after that happened, she did go off the deep end there for a couple of years, shaving her head. And
yeah, true.
There was a lot of change that she went through. Some might say that was her initiation into the Illuminati, a different stamp of show topics we've had, of conspiracy theories and whatnot. So
yeah,
that's a different topic for a different day. But yeah, I agree. If I go to Vegas to get married and get divorced after a weekend, I'm a fucking weirdo. If she does it, she sells 10 million copies of her next album.
Yeah,
Life is not fair.
Someone made up. One of the news guys made up had a really good point that they were making, is that people look at a situation, and depending on what side of that situation, they'll deem it as totally fine or totally objectifiable. It's the same situation, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what side you look at it at. You're either going to agree with it or disagree with it, and some people are going to say, oh, Michael Jackson would never do that. And some people are going to say, oh, I totally called that from a million years. It's the same scenario, maybe the same evidence, but people are going to believe what they're going to believe.
And I was thinking about this when I was coming home from the gym this afternoon, because I wanted to get into this topic about Michael Jackson when we recorded. I watched all, Macaulay Culkin came out on a record and said that Michael Jackson never touched him. And Corey Feldman came out and said the same thing after Macaulay Culkin did. And what I think is funny about Corey Feldman coming out and saying that is that he claimed to be raped by a lot of famous people in Hollywood. And he every time he tries to name names, for whatever reason, he does not do it, whether it's legal lawsuits or he just chickens out. But he came out and said that Michael Jackson was not one of those people and never touched him like that, which I thought was interesting. Because it's a contradictory to what these other two kids are saying. But maybe at least if he was doing it, he wasn't gonna, diddle another famous person at that point. That's a gray area of morality on his part if that's what he's justifying it as, or maybe he just wasn't into him like that. Maybe he did just want to be friends.
Yeah, maybe or I personally think that I think there was too much weirdness, like you said, in just a grown man wanting to hang out with boys all the time.
Yeah,
for me not to think that there's some truth or something happened with that. That's just my own personal opinion.
So. Yeah, I agree too. It'll be. I'm intrigued to finish to see how it is, but it's just one of those where I knew I wanted to say something to you about it because I think you'd enjoy the documentary just from a historical standpoint, and I'd be curious to hear your opinions on it too. And I know that the horrifying feelings that it left in my just thoughts about it all, just disappointment at the end of the day, just total disappointment.
So what do you think, if any, is there a lesson to be learned by watching these disturbing documentaries? Because I got to be honest, I see some of these documentaries of true life crime and true things that happened, and I am like you. I'm just like, I can't believe that I put that person on such a high pedestal when they didn't deserve it.
I think as a society, we are too far into loving those types of shows. And we've created a culture where now we want to know all the dirty details and the dirty deeds. in these shows or in these actual stories. And I think that's a problem with America. And I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. With the problem with true crime podcasts is that as you dive deep and you find all the details, you're also telling people the ways not to get caught by figuring out how these people did get caught, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. While you're educated, you're also potentially creating.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you nailed it right on the head. Although, I don't know about you, but in today's world, I don't know how people commit crimes anymore. I mean, people are getting caught with the DNA tests and there's cameras everywhere. And, now they can track people's cars and I frankly don't know how they get away with it.
I think it goes back to, as a society, we are still dumb. D-U-M. Dumb. You know. I know I spelled that wrong, Tom. That's to prove a point. D-U-M-B.
Yeah, well.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the lesson that I take when I watch these shows is that no matter what kind of no matter what our society does, I think that there are always going to be people who can be tempted for whether it's power, money, lust, whatever. They can be tempted to do things that in the whole grand scheme of things, the majority of us would never think would be possible to do.
Absolutely.
And
it would
I think
our
that
minds,
So, but what it does is that it, for me at least, it also renews my faith that the majority of people think very similar to the way I do.
That's cool.
that is not appropriate behavior. For example, like Michael Jackson. I mean, the rational human, the rational American would definitely not look upon his activities as a normal activity.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that for me, that the lesson that comes from these is that, wow, even though we think that we're so different from each other, I think the majority of people think exactly the same.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why it's more of a cautionary tale to say, look, even normal people can fall down a path that's bad for them. And we want to give you that knowledge of what not to do, or to recognize it more clearly.
That's true. We have covered quite the ground on this week's show.
Yeah.
Home buying to true crimes and Michael Jackson.
I thought you were supposed to come up with something light and fluffy, man.
I know, man. It started out light and fluffy, but you watch a documentary and then I want to talk about it and things go south from there.
One thing that happened last week that our listeners may not have known because it came after the recording, but our executive producer was a little bummed out. He was a little upset last week because he found out that one of his bars was closed.
Oh, Flanny's closed down. So big shout out to Flanny's.
And we were supposed to have him on this week to
vent,
kind of decompress.
Well,
to vent.
In fairness, though, he was much busier this week. He did complete his master's degree from the Grand Canyon University. So congratulations to Tom for completing his master's degree in something IT, computer security. I think that just means on paper he's smarter than us, but in reality, we still have the upper hand.
Well, I don't know. Tom's a pretty cool cat, so maybe he does have the upper hand and we just don't know it.
That's true, too. So as we wrap it up, hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, all at Liquid Carnage, and tell us, do you have a favorite true crime podcast that you like to listen to or documentary? Congratulate Tom at Liquid_EP on Twitter and Instagram. Getting your master's on any level is quite the accomplishment. So I don't say it often, but I will say it here. I am proud of him. That way it's recorded and nobody will listen to this that matters to him. So they'll never believe it if he says it, that I said that. So with that, Jason, why don't you take us home?
All right, man. Well, congratulations to our executive producer. I'm proud of him. That was an awesome accomplishment. Great topic. I know we were supposed to be light and fluffy, but I really enjoyed the topic. And check out Losers. Check out Leaving Neverland. Do some binge watching if you have to. Scott, once again, great episode. We thank all our listeners. That was Scott. I am Jason. And as always, if you never know quite what to say, just have yourself some Liquid Carnage.